Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video of myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is Ukraine War News Update, first part there for the 1st of July 2025. Pinch and a punch for the first of the month, no returns. I am chatting with Elliot Higgins from Bellingcat at 12:30, just after midday UK time. So please check that out. That promises to be a fascinating delve into disinformation and what he calls disordered discourse. So check that out. In the meantime, we'll go to the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, of course. You can find them in the description, linked in the description to the video below. 970 personnel, that's dipped below the 1,000 mark. 3 tanks, 6 troop-carrying AFVs. So low stats right across those 3. Of course, I say low stats. You're still losing 970 personnel in a day, and even 6 troop-carrying AFVs. You know, it all adds up, right? 36 artillery systems is 1.5 times the daily average, so that's a pretty good number there. 103 vehicles and fuel tanks, just above the 100 mark again. So somewhat mixed. I mean, artillery is fairly good. Vehicles and fuel tanks is getting up to where we were seeing it previously, but generally fairly quiet. Take that with a grain of salt. You know, it's I'm sure someone on the Prokof's front is going to be shouting at me for saying it's quiet now, as they are dodging bullets and mortar bombs. But nonetheless, you know, statistically, something of a calmer day yesterday. I don't know what that says, like I keep saying. I mean, are we seeing the Russians running out of a bit of steam, even though there are claims that they're mounting troops for a massive push in Zaporizhia, and there are claims that they have an awful lot up in Sumy, although they have been put on the back foot in Sumy, so I guess we'll have to see. Right, let's go and look at a number of different sources and videos. Here is a video. This is fascinating because these are Bober drones. So if you remember the Bober drones, I think that means beaver here. So I don't think I know that's what it means. These are the fairly large, you can see here, if I open that in a new tab, I might be able to, yeah, there's a human being for perspective, for comparison. These are fairly large drones, but I've not seen them be used at individual pieces of kit before. And here we see that they've been used in Crimea, hitting Pantsir S1 system with its crew, a Nebo-SVU radar, as a big radar arrays, a Pechora 3 coastal radar, 59 N6 Protivnik GE radar, and a Su-30 fighter jet at Syrskyi Air Base. Now, I'm not sure about the jet as far as if it's the last one on here. I think it was taken out maybe before it hits the jet. But anyway, this is really high value equipment being taken out by drones we haven't seen previously used against such equipment. That's not to say they haven't been, but yeah, you never know. Anyway, here, let's look at some of the equipment here, because this is really high value stuff. You know, big old radar arrays and whatnot. So here we go. Coming in on the approach to all of these different targets. And that one just, as you can see, escapes an air defense missile. Bash, that's one of the radar systems there. Bish, and then bash, and then bosh. So yeah, lots of high value kit here taken out, and I think this is yeah, there's your Sukhoi fighter jet, but then it sort of cuts out before that, and there's a flash. I presume it hit, well, I don't know, it might well have hit that jet. I don't know what would hit that drone, but at ground level almost, before it hits the jet. So what we have here, Anton Gerashenko adds up the exclusive footage of the combat operations Ukrainian-made UJ-26 Bober drones on the territory of Russian-occupied Crimea, taking out it's Pantsir S1, Niobe, so that's a Nebo-SVU radar, Pechora 3 coastal radar system, Protivnik GA radar system, and a Russian Su-30 jet. So that is pretty impressive. Then we hear this, and I presume this is a completely different instance. Ukrainian forces likely carried out a successful strike on a known Russian air defense position in occupied Crimea. Preliminary reports suggest the destruction of an S-300 or an S-400 surface-to-air missile system, along with radar units, possibly including the 30 N6E and the 92 N6E, or even the rare Castor 2E2 radars. So here we have a picture of an air defense system in situ, and here we have the situ on fire. So it could be that another really high value target has been taken out in Crimea. They've been absolutely hammering the positions in Crimea. It makes you wonder whether they could start trying to edge a bit of air advantage. Could they get to getting fighter bombers, dropping aviation bombs, or dropping guided glide bombs on Crimea? That would be a bit of a change in the situation over Crimea. But I don't know. Suffice to say that the Ukrainians have really been explicitly working on degrading Russian air defenses over Crimea for an awful long time. Now, we heard about the Marinovka airbase getting struck in Volgograd, I don't know, was it 3 nights ago? It was that 24-hour period when there were 4 planes that were taken out and 3 helicopters. Well, now we've received some information that there's possibly a 5th plane at that airfield that was taken out. So here, the claim from Military News UA is that 3 Russian Su-34 fighter bombers were burned completely. So previously we thought 2 destroyed, 2 damaged, possibly heavily damaged. So they all might well be taken out. So we have 3 burned completely and 2 more were damaged partially. So Visioner here says, major development according to information circulated based on Ukrainian intelligence. It has been revealed that on the morning of June the 27th, during a unique special operation by Ukraine's security service, a SPU, the Russian Air Force lost 5 Su-34 frontline bombers at the Marinovka airbase in Volgograd region. 3 were completely destroyed by fire, 2 were more damaged. Reports indicate the airbase was struck at dawn by long-range kamikaze drones. However, there are also alternative versions suggesting that a precise and rapid strike may have been carried out from Ukrainian-controlled territory, approximately 450 to 480 kilometers away, using a new type of Ukrainian ballistic missile, which, according to emerging information, may already be in serial production. So this could be the Krim 2, something like that ballistic missile being used, and exactly what I was talking about. Like, if the ballistic missile suddenly comes online, you might have some strikes on air bases, particularly that are within the 500 kilometer range. There's talk about this being a 300 kilometer missile, but with options to 500 kilometers or potential. And now if it can reach 500 kilometers, then you might start seeing some Russian planes be taken out. This was a really high value attack, and we kind of move on. But actually 5 planes being taken out in one night, and then 3 helicopters in the same 24-hour period. That's an incredible loss for the Russians. Okay, what else can we show you? The Leopard, this is a Leopard tank 2A4 of the 54th Separate Mechanized Brigade. It's coming under attack from incoming drones. It jams 1 with electronic warfare and then withstands hits from 2 more. This is so typical, isn't it? Like the challenge to anything moving near the front lines. You've got a drone there just bouncing off the front. Another one sounds like it hit behind. There was another explosion. And then it cuts to another point. There's another hit there. Some concertina wire there. So it's difficult to know what the electronic warfare one was, because this initial drone doesn't, I don't know, there, just comes down and hits near the front. Maybe they interfered with it enough to send it off from hitting directly. But anyway, that's a normal day for a tank, and amazingly, it's withstood the pressure there. Now, here we have a complete footage here of a Ukrainian Air Force MiG-29 Fulcrum completing a TOS bombing run, launching a pair of French-supplied AASM Hammer guided glide bombs on a Russian target. I'm going to show you this because it gives you an indication of how low these planes have to fly in order to evade being detected and acquired as a target. And then if it wants to release its bombs, it has to really pull up hard at the last minute. As you can see there, gets as high as it can to release those bombs and then banks away. We can't really see the bombs there, but one presumes they are thrown off and then are aided with the momentum of the plane going up before then coming to go into a downward phase. They do have rocket propulsion as well, those Hammer, AASM Hammer bombs. That's why they're probably pretty darned expensive compared to, say, what might be scaled up soon in terms of Ukrainian $25,000 guided glide bombs. But you can see how low the plane is before having to pull up as much as possible. Now, speaking of guided glide bombs, MiG-29 could have been that one. Destroyed a mercenary gathering point using these are GBU-62 guided glide bombs, precision guided bombs. So there you have just more evidence of these of aviation being used effectively, to the point where, and we've talked about this, I've said that it's clear that the Ukrainians are explicitly going for drone operators. That is like their number one target. We know that Robert Brovdy has come along and taken over the unmanned systems forces, and he has put a value on drone operators that's particularly high, throwing up the points that you can get for taking out drone operators. So that then incentivizes units to do so they can gather points to then convert those points into the best equipment they can get. So Ukraine just declared open season on Russia's drone nests in an urgent strategy shift, according to Euromaidan Press. Ukraine isn't just shooting down drones anymore, it's going after the operators. Under new leadership, drone crews are now the priority targets. So when Magyar Robert Brovdy, the famed commander of Ukraine's elite Birds of Magyar unit, accepted a big promotion, took command of the entire unmanned systems forces, the Ukrainian military's separate drone branch, he immediately got to work reforming Ukrainian drone groups, and now we know why. Brovdy just declared war on Russia's own drone groups. Brovdy, quote, has made drone operators his main target, explained Roy, a Canadian electronic warfare and drone expert. Brovdy has gamified the mission. The new app-based system allows Ukrainian drone teams to upload videos confirming their success strikes. Hits on Russian troops and equipment earn the teams points, and they can trade that in for new equipment. The new targeting priority and the game is all the right call for the Ukrainians, struggling to match the quality and quantity of Ukraine's wireless first-person view drones and radio jammers for grounding Russia's wireless FPV drones to Kremlin has increasingly shifted to fiber optic drones, sending and receiving signals via kilometers-long optical fibers that are a fraction of a millimeter thick. Fiber optic FPVs are unjammable, and the only way to directly defeat them is to shoot them down, dodge them, absorb their blows, hide from them, or cut their fibers. But there are indirect ways to defeat fiber optic drones. Ukraine's long-range attack drones have been bombarding the factories deep inside Russia that produce optical fiber and other FPV drone components. Closer to the front, short-range Ukrainian drones can target Russian FPV operators in their dugouts just a few kilometers from the line of contact. And that's Brovdy's plan, and the Russians don't like it. Quote, bad news from the front, one Russian blogger intoned. After the appointment of Magyar as commander of the unmanned systems of the armed forces of Ukraine, the hunt for our birdhouses began. From my own experience, the blogger noted, I can say that now the pressure on logistics has been eased and all efforts have been thrown into identifying and destroying our drones. And this is the post here from Roy that I sometimes refer to Roy myself. Magyar has made Russian drone operators his priority target. The new commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces and his point system for drone units awards 25 points for a destroyed drone operator and 12 for a wounded one. For a killed soldier, 12 points, 8 for a wounded. So this is really valuing the drone operators here very highly. So Ukrainian drone teams will, quote, pay special attention to fiber optics, the blogger warned. A few months ago, one enterprising Ukrainian drone team discovered it could track Russian fiber optic drone teams by scanning the cast-off optical fibers stretched across the battlefield from past FPV strikes and leading back to the operators' positions, assuming, of course, the operators hadn't moved. Moving may now be a matter of life and death for Russian drone teams. We need to strengthen camouflage and change positions more often, the blogger advised. And I actually read out this Russian entry to you some days ago. But a second Russian blogger warned that moving too often can expose drone teams to Ukrainian surveillance. Less movement, longer life, they wrote. And of course, there's your tension. You want to move so you can't get tracked so easily, but you don't want to move because then you get seen. You're vulnerable when you're moving. It's a bit like shoot and scoop becoming a vulnerable tactic. Decoy positions could help Russians' drone teams avoid the deadly attention of Ukrainian drones. Quote, start using a large number of false antennas, second Russian blogger advised. And in the real drone positions, the crews, operators who fly the drones with engineers who maintain them should spread out. Separate the points with your engineers, the second blogger recommended. Operators sit separately and engineers sit separately. Regardless of any preventative measures they take, Russian drone teams should expect an uptick in aerial attacks on their positions. Quote, the enemy understands the threat, so they use their entire arsenal to strike, the second Russian blogger observed. The first blogger wrote that more attacks by Ukraine's best HIMARS systems are possible. When they calculate the positions of drone nests, they use all means of suppression. They do not skimp and send HIMARS. And it's interesting that the other day, Dimko Zhluktenko was saying that he's never seen as many HIMARS strikes as he's just seen recently. So you could put two and two together and possibly reach 4. The best defense for Russia's drone crews might be to return the increased attention and escalate their own surveillance of and attacks on Ukrainian drone crews. Quote, it is necessary to intensify work on the enemy's birdhouses, one of them said. Then we also hear that Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi has banned the concentration of personnel. I mean, goodness me, 3 years too late. Military equipment and the use of tent camps at training centres to reduce vulnerability to airstrikes and improve troop safety. I mean, that should have been a decision we heard absolutely ages ago. You know, we have seen so many training grounds get struck. So you need to mitigate against that straight away. Now, someone's car yesterday exploded in Moscow. There were some rumours about this being a very high value target. I haven't heard too much since then. I heard something like the deputy, some deputy of the armed forces. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it looks like there's been an assassination with a massive car bomb in Moscow yesterday. Okay, moving on to distant strikes. And last night was a relatively calmer night for the Ukrainians, as 52 drones only were sent into Ukraine. I mean, considering we've had nights of 479, 52 is almost a tenth of that, a ninth of that. So Russian forces launched 52 drones overnight. Ukraine's air defense, including aviation, electronic warfare units and mobile fire groups, intercepted 47. So a fifth getting through, just under a tenth getting through there. It's probably about 9%. 14 were shot down, 33 suppressed and disorientated via electronic warfare. Pretty good interception rates, but far fewer sent. We know that Dnipropetrovsk casualties were reported there. Actually not in Dnipro city, but nearby in a place called Kamyanska. I don't think that's a Kamyanska on the Zaporizhia reservoir, but another Kamyanska. These names definitely are repeated throughout Ukraine. Right, then we're going to get on to what happened last night, and it was a very busy night for the Ukrainians on the Russians. Russia, I think, have had a bad few days in terms of losses. 8 aircraft, 5 jets, 3 helicopters. That's bad enough. Then look at all those air defense systems and radars taken out. Huge number there. And we saw some, previously over the last month or so, we've seen heaps taken out, particularly in the Crimea area from drones released from USVs, unmanned surface vehicles, that act as motherships, literally ship, as the aerial drones take off from them and go and strike radars nearer the coastline. So lots and lots has been happening. I think Ukraine have been doing a really good job of attriting the Russian material. Last night there were strikes with Storm Shadow missiles. We understand, although there's no battle damage assessment out this morning yet, we understand that a high-value target was hit in Donetsk city, then near Donetsk in Yanyuvata. Then we hear about Luhansk, occupied Luhansk, as well as Rostov, Crimea, and even Astrakhan was on high alert last night, and that's near the Caspian Sea. So, occupiers say a girl has been killed and 3 people injured. They're careful to only show markets and civilian infrastructure. I mean, this is something that's fairly common to both sides damaged. But the target was a former Donetsk State Research and Metalwork Design Institute. So that's in Donetsk. That's one of the targets there. Also seems Ukraine was tipped off that Russia's 8th Combined Arms Army set up its HQ in a Research and Design Institute. So actually, this is what I was talking about last night, the HQ for the Russia's 8th Combined Arms Army. Whether that proves correct or not, yet to be seen. So there were some considerable strikes on both sides of the street. There's flaming buildings one side, and then a building that had been completely gutted by what looked like a Storm Shadow bunker busting type cruise missile. But it wasn't just Donetsk. So that was in itself, that was really significant. Cruise missiles sent against targets inside Donetsk. That shows that they have cruise missiles for a start. We weren't even sure that they still had any cruise missiles, whether they be Storm Shadows or Scout PGs, not sure. And the target was high enough value to strike with cruise missiles. If they are scarce, which one imagines they are, then they are only going to be taking out the highest value targets. It could also indicate they're getting more of these, so they feel they're able to use them more freely. I don't know. Not just Donetsk, though, also Luhansk. And this video is pretty telling, I think, showing, you can hear drones and air raid sirens and whatnot, but shows that there was some significant damage done and explosions, possibly to an oil depot. That one on the right could well be an oil depot. One on the left, less sure. Tim White said, as I mentioned earlier, about multiple explosions in Yanyuvata, the Russian invaders seem to be losing a lot of equipment. This was, that image was, although that's only a still from the video showed a significant fire there in Donetsk. And there's another image. I'm not quite sure where that's from. Luhansk is not keen to miss out on all the fireworks displays, kindly arranged by Ukraine's top medic, Dr. One Drone, and his beautiful assistant, Miss Debris. So yeah, lots of activity. Not just Luhansk city being hit tonight either. This is from Dovzhansk. It's still called by its Russian name as Sverdlovsk by most. It's deep in Luhansk region, close to the Russian border. So there was, you can see tracer bullets and whatnot being sent up, air defense active there. And yeah, Russia is claiming Storm Shadow missiles hit Donetsk tonight. The damage does look consistent with what those warheads would cause, and it would also confirm Ukraine was hitting a major target, Russia's 8th Combined Arms Unit. A lengthy video showing the immediate aftermath. This is what I showed last night, and you can see from this video, as he just walks through here, I mean, this is mass destruction, no fires. This is just, fundamental infrastructure damage here, and you can look down there. Damage has been done right down to basement level. In fact, everything below where you are at the moment is below ground. So this is ground level. So it looks like a couple of floors down, there's damage done. So, really widespread damage from what appears to be a cruise missile strike using, say, the Broach warhead from the Storm Shadow missiles that has a double whammy where it explodes to take out the outer cover, if you like, the outer parts of the building. This is how it works as a bunker buster. So it has 2 stages. Then the secondary warhead explodes once it's inside whatever you're trying to attack. Then just trying to see if there's anything else to add. Lots of sort of damage assessments and whatnot coming through. Okay, Visioner says boom, 4 Storm Shadow cruise missiles successfully struck an occupied settlement of Yezhny-Novata in Donetsk. I'd also heard another report saying 6 explosions there. Additionally, a metallurgical plant in the city of Donetsk was bombed. Facility manufactures military products for the Russian army, including key components for drones and missiles. So, HQ, oil depot, military industrial complex, and possibly Yezhny-Novata was a railway junction. So that is significant if they've taken out some railway infrastructure. It looked like a major railway junction as well. So lots more to come from that. I did my breaking news update on that last night. You can go and check that out. That was a live breaking news update because this was all happening last night, and it was fairly significant. You know, the use of storm shadows and the amount of data that was coming out straight away was worthy of a short live. So go and check that out. A drone attack struck the city of Izhevsk in Russia, located roughly 1,300 kilometers. Some are saying that this is actually the longest drone attack by the Ukrainians. So that's happening this morning, or happened this morning. 1,300 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. According to Russian sources, the target was a Kupol Electromechanical Plant, which caught fire following the strike. The facility is known for its involvement in producing air defense systems. So you can see there's at least some damage done there. You've got an explosion and smoke and potentially fire. So there is a strike an awful long way here from the Ukrainian border. As Tim White says, Ukraine may have also managed to hit an oil refinery in Saratov. So that's somewhat closer. It's where the Engels Air Base is, and indeed the oil refinery has been hit there previously. If it's just the one, there may be multiple though. Any damage looks relatively minor though, according to Tim. The airport was closed there too amid a wide-scale alert of a drone attack. A pro-Ukraine Supernova says there's damage to installations on the territory, but no fire. So no huge destruction to the oil refinery there. Russia says it shot down 60 drones at night, 17 over occupied Crimea and 16 in Rostov region. 4 more were taken down in Saratov, which you've just seen, according to Moscow, including this spectacular footage shot in the city. So here we have a drone being taken out there. That looks like a Lithium drone being taken out in the sky. Yep, that is. So you can see the air defense missile coming in there. These are relatively slow-moving drones. They are really widely used by the Ukrainians. It amazes me that they get as far as they do, because I often think that they're relatively easy to shoot down, but clearly not. I mean, yeah, if you've got air defense missiles, but they're going to be pretty expensive and possibly thin on the ground. But even like how slow these move, you do wonder, and quite low. They're quite low as well. That small arms fire should be able to do something on them. If they're going like 1,000 kilometers to reach their eventual destination, then you've got a lot of time to take them down. So we have Tim White here then reporting on Izhevsk again. So it's got a fairly major city, Izhevsk, 600,000. He said, so I have to start with the breaking news. Ukrainians may have had their longest range ever successful drone strike on its enemy. It's a big city, capital of the Udmurt region. Ukraine's drones have traveled well over 1,300 kilometers to hit there. The plant hit is the Kupol factory, which has become one of Russia's main drone factories in the war. It's the second time the operation in Izhevsk has been hit, but initially this looks more effective. So it looks like there's considerable damage being done there by a fire, creating that billowing smoke. Ukraine's previous hit on the Kupol plant in Izhevsk came nearly 8 months ago in November, and he shows some evidence of that. To use its full name, the Izhevsk Electromechanical Plant Kupol makes a variety of war machinery, as well as drones. They also produce anti-aircraft missile systems, important weapons components, and training complex, which Putin once delighted in seeing. So here you go. This is the plant that has been hit, and you can see those sort of radar systems and whatnot being made there. The moment of one of the impacts was caught on camera by someone near to Kupol military plant in Izhevsk. As you can see, there had already been at least one hit by Ukrainian drones. So let's just have a look at that. Let's go back to the beginning. So there's already smoke coming up there. And then we see that other explosion, I think. Is that from this one? Yeah, you can see the drone coming in. That's a Lithium drone on its terminal phase there, coming down and hitting that facility. So a couple of drone strikes at least hitting there. And if I was Ukraine, I'd be thinking, right, get some more in tonight on some of these other buildings. Or today, you know, just while you know that there is no air defense right there now, and this is 1,300 kilometers away, you know, are they going to draw some in there? Well, maybe. So let's hit it now. Another of the many videos from locals concerning that strike. So that's been caught on camera quite a bit. Russia says at least 9 people were injured in that drone attack. These people had peaceful lives almost 1,000 miles from Ukraine before Putin's illegal and disastrous decision to invade an innocent neighbor, says Tim White there, putting it in the proper context. Okay, so Izhevsk was hit. And then shortly before 7 a.m. UK time, the Izhevsk airport was closed. Half an hour ago, more airports were shut down due to drone danger. Kazan, Nizhny Nekamsk, Ulyanovsk are the latest to refuse landings or takeoffs. Maybe there's an attack on the other big drone plant in Yelabuga. That would be good. Unfortunately, there's also been a Russian strike in Ukraine, and at least one civilian has died. That's Kamyanska missile strike there. That's what I was telling you about. That one is near Dnipro. And as mentioned, they've also potentially hit an oil refinery in Saratov. Okay, so the Izhevsk Electromechanical Plant produces Tor and OSA air defense systems and drones like the Garpia A1 and other military equipment. So that just gives you a little bit more information. Local media reports that the plant endured at least two hits. So that is good news for the Ukrainians. They've had a very busy night, and it is indeed the Lithium drone that appears to be doing its thing. As you can see there, it has its telltale twin tails. Too many tails there. And yeah, that is the drone of choice for many of these long-range attacks. As you can see, it's not going hugely fast. It's flying quite low. It should be relatively easy to take out, but, you know, Russia's a big country and they're going to be flying those drones over airspace that is out in the middle of nowhere. I'm sure they'll be selecting their routes very, very carefully. Right, moving on to other bits and pieces. So all in, I think a pretty good few days for Ukraine in terms of attrition of Russian equipment. Now, we hear a potential new form of Russian terrorism is being investigated after a 5th ship suffered explosions shortly after visiting Russian ports. The latest incident saw blasts on the Villamora. I reported this yesterday in my Geopolitics video. It's carrying 1 million barrels of oil near Libya, but it's loaded with, apparently, according to Tim, Kazakh oil and not Russian oil. So, you know, the claim here is it could be Russia that has done that, since it's Kazakh oil gone into Russian ports and then left Russian ports to go to Libya, and might be that Russia don't want other people to get hold of Kazakh oil. So on and so forth. So not 100% sure, but it's speculation there, of course. Now, wow. So for the first time, the UN has acknowledged that the Olivka prison massacre was a premeditated Russian war crime. So according to Ukraine's ombudsman Dmytro Lubinets, over 50 Ukrainian POWs were killed in a July 22 explosion. New UN analysis confirms Russia planned and carried out the attack. This is very, very important. Now, if the UN, not for the first time, are admitting that Russia are routinely carrying out these heinous war crimes, then there needs to be some serious pushback rather than the lifting of sanctions on Russian banks like we're hearing from the United States at the moment. More on that in a second. We should be going, hang on, this is completely unacceptable. So what happened here, these were, if I remember correctly, some of those who were captured at the Azov-style steel plant in Mariupol, some of the Azov troops that the Russians hate, and some of them were placed in this Olivka prison within occupied territories. And then the prison blew up, and the Russians claimed that it was a Ukrainian attack, but none of the evidence pointed to it being a Ukrainian attack, and many people are speculating that it was a Russian false flag attack to take out. They didn't know what to do with those Azov prisoners, or they did know what to do with them, kill them, or whatever. It was a decision to take these prisoners out, so they didn't have to go through whatever rigmarole might have been involved in taking them to court and this and that and keeping them in prison forever and a day. Just, take them out and then blame the Ukrainians. But actually, it didn't work out that way. As mentioned, all the evidence was pointing to the conclusion that the Russians did it. And now a new UN analysis confirms that Russia did plan and carry out the attack. So that is very significant, because that was a heinous event. Massacring people in prison, just firing missiles at a prison, just because you want to take out the prisoners. Just horrific in your own area, in your own territory. Right, Chris Owicki reports that tens of gigabytes of secret data on Russia's strategic electronic warfare systems has been hacked by the pro-Ukrainian Russian Volunteer Corps, RDK. They say that Russia's electronic warfare shield is not just fragile, it's full of holes due to multiple flaws and vulnerabilities. 2 weeks ago, the RDK announced that it had obtained a large quantity of data on Russia's electronic warfare systems, including technical specifications, diagrams, official correspondence, equipment, setup methods, drawings, test reports, and functional information. RDK Commander Fortuna says that, quote, "We got more than just the external appearance. We see the internal logic architecture, connections between nodes. We know who designed it, which companies supplied the units, which research institutes are responsible for the developments. We received a number of important military developments along with protocols, engineering solutions, and approvals from the Russian Ministry of Defense. In addition, we managed to establish the entire chain of enterprises involved in production and supply. And it is also important that all the persons involved in the development and creation of these stations were identified. Upon completion of the operation, the RDK had their names, addresses, car numbers, places of work." And of course, these, and we can talk about the morality of this, but one would assume that people working in the weapons industry, providing weapons for Russia to commit to their war, become fair game in terms of targeting for, in the case of a war. As happens in all wars, you want to take out the opposition's ability to manufacture weapons. So the military-industrial complex gets routinely hit in wars, World War One, World War Two, particularly, and onwards. It's also important that all persons involved in the development and creation of these stations, so names, addresses, car numbers, places of work. Wow. RDK announced on a YouTube video that it had obtained data on the following: the Anchar K, a polar warfare naval station, automated station, electronic suppression of satellite communication lines in Arctic conditions, installed on icebreaker-class ships, developed as response to the vulnerability of the Russian Federation in high-latitude areas, so on and so forth. The Ozon-May over-the-horizon radar project using the evaporation waveguide effect. It works by forming a plasma channel in the near-surface atmosphere. To the Tirada 2.3 interference satellite communications electronic suppression, a station part of the Tirada 2S complex. So this is like satellite stuff. The NMSREPDDV suppression radio brain, ground-based mobile station for suppressing long-range satellite comms. Controls other electronic warfare systems, suppresses Fleet Satcom, Milstar, MUOS, etc., and other links, so on and so forth. Like all of this stuff that they have now found the data on, I wonder what they're going to do with all of that information. We shall see, I am sure. Now, Russian troops have taken over the site of one of Ukraine's most valuable lithium deposits. So this is basically between Pokrovsk and I guess the southern part, although it's now a bit of an angle. It used to dogleg around Vuhledar. Now it's an angle like that. But halfway down there is a village called Shevchenko, still in Donetsk Oblast. And it is a site of a very valuable lithium deposit, lithium mine, and other rare earth metals and minerals. Russian troops had taken over the site of one of Ukraine's most valuable lithium deposits near the village of Shevchenko, as Russia ramps up its summer offensive. There was an investor, I don't know if we've got it here. The reported Russian takeover of the deposits comes just 2 months after Ukraine signed a landmark critical minerals agreement with the US to attract investment in the war-torn country, particularly to its strategic resources, including its untapped lithium reserves. But despite Ukraine's apparent loss of the deposit, it's unlikely to have an impact on the agreement, Syrskyi Fursa, Deputy Managing Director at investment firm Dragon Capital, told the Kyiv Independent. So that was a bit I wanted to communicate that actually okay, it's only one investor, but an investor here saying that it's unlikely to have a material impact on the minerals agreement. Now, this is just one example of so many. I haven't been reporting these as of late because there's just too many happening. But Prune 60 reports on a passenger plane returning to departure airport in the Yakutia due to malfunction. It was flying from Yakutia to Moscow and returned due to that malfunction. Do not fly on Russian airline. 163 passengers were apparently on board. Now, I just picked this one out because this is happening all the time. So many. There was one the other day of two airliners clipping on a runway. There's so much going on in the aviation industry. It is not a good time to be in Russian aviation. I would be very reluctant to put myself on a Russian airliner. In all honesty, I'll just get the train. Although these days with trains as well, who knows? So Jay in Kyiv says the Russian economy is toast. He's done a few interviews recently on that, a few videos on this topic. Yevgeny Istrubin, the volume of overdue mortgages in Russia is growing at a frantic pace. As of the 1st of June, the volume of overdue debt is 136 billion rubles. That's an 8% growth for the month and 103% growth for the year. This is exponential growth. In reality, everything is much worse. Bloomberg wrote that bankers are hiding problems. Right? And you wonder why Putin came out the other day and said we're going to not spend so much on effectively on the war, on military next year, with a was it 6.3% reduction in expenditure. I mean, the Russian economy is in trouble, and this is why it gets so freaking bloody frustrating that, as Adam Kinzinger says, this should be bigger news. The US lifts several sanctions on Russia tied to civil nuclear energy. I did report this, but I just want to show you just the actual document. A new Treasury license issued June the 27th allows transactions with major Russian banks, including Gazprom Bank, Sberbank and VTB, to support foreign nuclear projects started before November 2024. Hungary's 12 billion Pax-2 plant, that's 12 billion euros, with Rosatom is expected to benefit directly. So there you have the document that alleviates the sanctions on Russia's banking industry in the context of European energy. And that is probably Trump being very kind to Viktor Orban, I would assume. So yeah, Trump removes sanctions on Russian banks. This while Putin steps up the bombings and drone attacks on civilians in Ukraine. Yeah, so there you go. Finally, during a closed dinner, and this is pertinent to what we were just talking about, during a closed dinner at the NATO summit, Trump did not agree to impose sanctions on Russia, according to Euroactiv. Petr Pavel, the Czech president, said, quote, "We spoke to him very consistently and collectively, convincing him that the time has come to significantly increase economic pressure on Russia, not with the aim of causing Russia's economic collapse. That is not in our interests, but in order for it to realize that there is simply no alternative to negotiations. So far, he remains restrained, but realizes that this is a very effective tool." So he realizes that it's an effective tool, but doesn't want to use it. But then there's a bill coming through, hopefully Congress soon, the Graham and Blumenthal bill, but that allows a waiver for Trump to use that at his discretion. So there he has executive control over the implementation of the sanctions bill, massive sanctions bill. So he understands it can be an effective tool, but he doesn't want to do it. He just doesn't want to harm Putin. Anyway, there's some evidence of that from Petr Pavel. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate your support. Take care. Please remember that we are still going through the Car for Ukraine summer campaign, or not that one, the summer campaign. So if you go to atpgeo.com/donate, then you will be taken to the summer sunshine, and then we are almost there. Look, 9,311. This is amazing, guys. And we're trying to get to 11,000 for that single truck for them. There are two badges now, two patches. So you can get those, the Summer Sunshine, Car for Ukraine patch. So there are also other things available, pins and unit patches and whatnot, depending on what you donate and what have you. There's a donor wall at the bottom. I'm going to leave this up here. Thank you so much to all of these people. Some very kind donations just taken place. Really appreciate that. Yes. So we've got John Manklow here and David Lewis. Incredible generosity from David Lewis again. Just really, really superb. So thank you to all of the people on this donor wall and everyone who has donated so wonderfully to this campaign. Thank you to those who spread the word as well, because if you can't afford to, don't have the wherewithal to, then you can help by spreading the word about this. Okay, thank you so much. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.